our next panel is on the buy-side puzzle and how to unlock that. And of course, there are several ways that this can be driven, including connectivity and interoperability, thinking about new functionality in token form, as well as hybrid products and their potential appeal. And so with that, I'd like to welcome up our next panel, who will talk about the buy-side puzzle and how to drive liquidity and engagement. Please come on up. And I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today, and also thank you especially kind of attending after the post-Kuma lunch. So we have a great panel here today, and I think we are going to focus a lot of our discussion on the buy-side puzzle. I think since morning we've kind of been hearing this, the whole question around the demand side, like really where is the demand, how does demand really work out, and how do you drive liquidity and engagement for digital assets? So I'll allow everyone to quickly introduce themselves. I'll first go. So I'm Sagun Garg. I'm from Julius Baer, we're the second largest Swiss private bank, and I'll be moderating the panel today.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Henry. I'm the founder and the CEO of DGFT. DGFT is a marketplace. It's a securitized equivalent, but we are DEX. That's the difference. It's a DEX, but regulated. We are the first regulated in Singapore. We have the primary and the secondary licenses. You can view us like a licensed Uniswap type of marketplace, can dealing with real world assets. So on our platform in the last 6 months, we have a UBS money market fund, first launch through DGFT. And also in this March, Invesco launched the first private credit fund, also through DGFT.
Amazing.
Ryan Rugg, head of digital assets for our TTS business, Treasury Trade Solutions, which Henry just shared with me. He's a fellow Citi TTSer, alumni. So looking forward to conversations to discuss Citi Token Service and what we launched and how we're scaling.
Hey everyone, my name is Ryan Lavelle. I'm Director of Capital Markets at Chainlink. Chainlink is a global standard on how to get data into, out of blockchains, as well as connect different blockchains to enable secure, compliant transactions.
Hey everybody. Hey everybody. My name is Ryan Marcante. I work at SEI. I run our portfolio strategies team, so model portfolios, fund of funds for institutions and retail.
Great. Awesome. So yeah, before we begin, the one quick puzzle. How many Ryans are there on the panel? Okay,
We
so
wanted to make it easy for
yeah,
you.
it's
so you
pretty
went further.
liquid out there right now if Ryan was a token. So okay, so I'll quickly hit off. I think I'll start off with a very interesting question. So if history of financial markets are a testimony, right? Many financial markets are built out of liquidity crisis, and that typically becomes a very big challenge. So is it a good word? Is it a curse word? I don't know. It's reflective of times. Maybe we could start with you, Ryan.
Yeah, so the thesis statement that we actually started with when we built Citi Token Service was around liquidity. So it's funny that you brought up that word. Our clients wanted 24/7, 365, always on payments and liquidity. So that's where we started. And so our clients, I'm targeting multinationals, so our large, corporates. We have top 80% of the Fortune 500 companies that we cover. We move roughly around $4 or $5 trillion a day, but they still suffer from weekends and holiday and banking cutoffs. So how do you increase that? And a lot of our treasurers, forecast, but we're in 90 plus branches. So it's not really efficient to have to put the money in all those different branches. So how do you create a network that can move money instantaneously across the globe? And that's what Citi Token Service did. And we picked our first largest money hub. So where the largest amount of our clients use between the UK, Singapore, Hong Kong, and US to allow them to move money weekends and holidays. And then, an interesting thing is we also abstracted the complexity of a blockchain. Ryan reminded me before this panel, he's like, you're really OG. You've been in this space since 2015. Learned that a lot of large enterprises aren't ready to manage wallets and host nodes and that. So how do we take that complexity away and just add the efficiency of the technology? And like, so we started with Liquidity on our, first kind of use case that we launched in September.
Amazing. So you kind of mentioned about the market cutoff. Like that's a typical challenge when you're dealing with the TradFi world and you're settling with the digital assets world. The weekend cutoffs, the time zone cutoffs, and this actually creates situations where you almost have a rotational door issue of either it fans out or fans in, depending on how you see it in a market. So, I mean, how would you see that, Lovell? Would you be able to give sort of your point of view from, data connectivity, pricing challenges? How do you kind of look at some of these issues?
Sure, and I think from an asset manager's perspective, they're used to end-of-day batch systems where you subscribe to a fund based on a NAV, which is struck from a 1975 COBOL system that ends up going to another COBOL system, a transfer agent, which is tied to payment rails, which run on ACH and things that take potentially 5 days to settle. So a lot of like the financial crises that have happened in the fund space, they are the liquidity provider. You buy and sell with the fund manager, and it's kind of up to them to execute in the market and not get completely wiped out from, broker dealers creating prices for fixed income. So imagine taking that world and trying to get it into this 24/7, 365. We're not transacting at just 4 p.m. on a NAV. We're transacting now. The money is being sent now. And if we can borrow, I think, a lot of what's happened in kind of the permissionless innovation that has occurred, which is known as DeFi. Have you seen the volatility that has occurred in those markets? We're talking, you're down 80% at 3 a.m. on a Saturday. And I think if you look at the performance of the top tier protocols, in a very self-interested way, those protocols powered by Chainlink, they're still there today. No users lost money, and the liquidity just worked. And I think we're at a time now where how can you connect kind of this old batch-based system to the 24/7, 365 system while being compliant, secure, and adhering to the rules and regulations. And I think some of the recent things that came out from the SEC last week involving transfer agency and kind of removing the duality of like the on-chain record is just some courtesy copy, right? I think we're slowly headed in the right direction, but who provides liquidity on a Saturday, at 3 a.m.? Is that a permissionless protocol? How do you solve for that? So I think these are the types of challenges where I think like we're headed into like it's only the traditional kind of players figuring this out in workflows to now I think there's a real eagerness to connect the permissionless innovation that occurs in the open public blockchain networks with the compliant capital, shall we say. Compliant capital, and then there's like crazy uncompliant capital with permissionless innovation. How do you connect those two to create a world where everything just works and settles instantly? So that's kind of a very futuristic visionary view, but like that's I think some of the things that we're working on and we're trying to achieve at Chainlink.
Very well painted, like how the future could potentially kind of get solved. But let's talk about today, like how fragmented is the liquidity because of these challenges of weekend settlements. Would you want to take a jab, Mercante?
Sure. Liquidity is an interesting topic, right? So just to give some background that I think is really interesting. I assume no one else is going to find it interesting, but I'll give this background anyways. 2020, COVID time, right? March. ETFs are a really interesting product, right? They have the NAV, it's struck at the end of the day. It should be the quote unquote true price of the underlying assets. But when you have liquidity strain in the system, you see things trade at a pretty heavy discount to NAV. So I know in some of the ETF models I manage, we had a high yield muni fund and it traded at a 28% discount to NAV on a day. That's one that's really tough to see. But the question is, why did it trade at that discount, right? So to me, there's two reasons, potential reasons. One is you're seeing liquidity preferences on the books, right? People say, I have this asset, I need cash, I need to get out of this asset, and I'm willing to sell it at a quote unquote discount. The second is the NAV was stale. Just because you created quote unquote liquidity, intraday liquidity from an illiquid asset does not mean that that asset is now liquid, right? So my guess is somewhere in between. You're seeing liquidity preferences, which could be on chain in the future or on the books in the current system, play out with the same time that the underlying assets weren't even tradable. The market makers behind the scenes couldn't actually take those assets in delivery and sell them on the open market. So the idea that liquidity, that you can take something, especially a less liquid asset, and create more liquidity, I think is probably partially true. And we need to think about that a little bit. And like you were saying, like over the weekend, who's going to be providing liquidity? I have absolutely no idea. It's not going to be me. But I do hope, and I expect there will be market makers. Maybe the spreads will be a little bit wider, and they'll clip a little bit. They'll clip a little bit more on how they're making these markets. But I think that offers everyone an opportunity to be able to see a little bit more transparency underlying, right? The stale NAV that we get every day is not the actual price of a lot of these assets.
Awesome. So lack of liquidity. Who's going to provide that liquidity over the weekend? Henry, you have an answer, I believe. Dexter's to the rescue.
We are looking for the answers. That's our job. Liquidity, when we talk about liquidity, I think is good. Why? Because it, like the water in the river, right? It's unstoppable. And also now we came into a time, technology is a big enabler. Technology is always a key driver behind many things. Technology in banking, technology in transportation, right? If we don't have flight, don't have car, we're not so liquid, which you can only within your 10 miles. Same apply to the money. Now we come into the so-called art of state of art, or the ultimate ideal situation is 24/7. It's a 24/7 and 365 days a year. Now we come into a very exciting time. Is there's a technology can bring us from today to the most ideal situation. It's 24/7 T plus seconds. That's blockchain-based technology. So in this regard, I think we're at a very exciting time. Beyond that, I cannot imagine if already 24/7 T plus seconds or milliseconds, what can be better. Probably the people in this room, we are the people to bring this area of things to the ultimate ideal situation. Then coming to the question is who provides 24/7 and over the weekend? The answer could be simple is there money over the weekend? There is money. There's a residue, not the residue, the balance of money, no matter Monday or Saturday or Sunday. The money is there, just because the people cannot use the money. And also, is there any demand for the money? The answer is also yes. Probably not much in the traditional financial markets, but it's already happening in the crypto markets, because BTC, ETH, etc., they are trading 24/7. So there's a people need the money because it's a trading endless. You may give up your sleep, but you can trade if you don't sleep. So the demand is there and the supply is there. Then why cannot be matched? And this kind of a matching is already happened. Has already happened in the crypto world, which is stablecoin plus the token-based assets. But there are not many. Basically, it's BTC, ETH, so-called crypto assets. So the assets in token, money in token, and the technology is in a blockchain, and the account system is a wallet. So it's already happened. That's why my passion driven me from the traditional finance go to this blockchain finance is a so-called decentralized approach. Decentralized means a de-intermediation, less intermediate as possible. But then coming to but crypto assets, crypto money is only talk about the less than 3 trillion. We have 300 trillion assets and trillions of money out there not bring on chain. If we move part of it, they can enjoy the benefits of the technology. So I'm very bullish about that.
Awesome. So retail is already demonstrating an appetite for showing how the money can be used over the weekends. The question is back on the OTC trading and prime brokerages, whether will they start operating as well 365 over the weekend, and I think that's where the question is going for these markets to be able to kind of support that kind of a capability, to be able to become quasi 24/7 or almost 365 days, I think.
Yeah, and I think the answer is yes. We started with a thesis statement, liquidity and payments, but we have a Singapore broker dealer that during Chinese New Year would typically, pre-fund or forecast what U.S. equities they were going to buy and move the money ahead of time. Well, with Citi Token Service, they now are able to move it instantaneously. Even though the Singapore branch was closed, they could still settle within the U.S. equity market. So we're starting to see more of the traditional world kind of enter into this 24/7, 365 real time. There's still the debate: do people really want T+0? But they are wanting to be able to, access their cash, holidays, weekends, no cutoffs. So I think you are starting to see the traditional, and that's where I focus, at least with the more TradFi clients and the multinationals, not on the retail side. And I'm starting to see, more interest in this space.
Interesting. So how does interoperability and pricing also kind of become important from a Chainlink standpoint in these scenarios? Because there is technology that needs to kind of also price some of these assets in real time and kind of have them, those feeds available. And I think that becomes a bottleneck in terms of your infrastructure setup. So would you be able to give and share more with the audience, like how does that really work from a Chainlink standpoint, and in general in market, how does one subscribe to this kind of infrastructure?
Sure, and I think, as an asset issuer, you have a decision to make. Where are you going to issue your asset? Because there are a lot of users on specific blockchains. There's a lot of certain types of users on specific blockchains. Maybe the Ethereum users have more net worth in wallets than, let's say, Solana users who have smaller dollar amounts. Like, these are decisions that you shouldn't necessarily need to make, though. Because with a solution like ours, you can essentially move tokens around these blockchains to enable them to settle, right? So when you think about what is a cross-chain order book look like, it's kind of like how traditional markets work today, right? You don't necessarily care that your broker-dealer is running like a Postgres database and the other broker-dealer is running a SQL database, do you? All you care about is, did the trade settle in a secure, compliant way? And that's exactly what we're doing, is building a standard and even working with the likes of Swift to actually use even standard messaging, the good old MT542 delivery versus payment types of messaging, to instruct these blockchains to settle tokens and then move the cash leg on the other side. And it can be stable coins, it can be traditional cash. I think it's a plumbing thing, and ultimately the user isn't going to see any of this. You're going to log into the platform, there's going to be a marketplace, there's going to be listed equity there. These are the stocks that are tokenized, these are the funds that are tokenized. I'm just going to buy and sell. And I think we're still not there yet from a user experience perspective. I often say raise your hand if you use ChatGPT-2. No one raises their hand. Have you used ChatGPT-3? Everyone raises their hand. Why? It's a seamless experience. They put an amazing front end, and all that back end has been completely abstracted away. I think we need to get there. In this space, but the dealing with wallets and dealing with compliance, and these are a lot of the hard problems that we're solving at Chainlink.
That's what we had to do. Think of these large multinational enterprises. They're not ready to host nodes and have wallets yet, where they are in their journey. So we completely obfuscate the complexity of a blockchain. They don't actually, other than knowing they're, using Citi Token Service and but we'll mint the token in New York, send it to Singapore, and burn it. So it's fiat for fiat in their accounts, because their ERP reporting systems, that's what they know. We don't want additional operation risk management. That's not where they are. So we had to meet the large enterprises where they are on their journey. So it's they log on via API or Citi Direct, however they typically access our treasury systems. It's the same way. And that was having worked at IBM prior and setting up different kind of networks for banks, and where certain other banks do require you to open new accounts. And like, these corporates have hundreds, if not thousands, of accounts across multiple banks. They want to streamline these processes, and it's like one of it is creating like that interoperability that you talked about between multiple banks. Like, no one wants just a Citi token. Like, I mean, I do believe success breeds success, and like we're fortunate that we're in multiple countries, but you know, we've started with a network play. Like, we recognize that clients want, you know, always on 24/7, 365, but like multi-asset, multi-currency, you know, access. So it's like, how do you build that? And it's like, if you can't move a token in safely and soundly in your own four walls, there's no way you can connect externally.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's a perfect segue to ask this question on stable coins. Like the Genius Act is also around the corner. Yesterday was a phenomenal development. And I think, how do you kind of see the role of stable coins as a pillar to kind of enable some of this liquidity requirements, like completely, like it's run by independent issuers, for the likes of Tether, Circle. So how does that become like an instrument for creating deep liquidity for some of these settlements for tokenized assets?
Yeah, maybe I can contribute some points. I think stablecoin is such a critical thing. It is an enabler or even a catalyst for the adoption of a digital economy, digital finance. Stablecoin is so beautiful because it is very easy to understand. Just like you have a T-bills with a custodian, then you mint the token-based certificate on chain. So very easy to understand, and they can make money. So a lot of people rush in. But I will say stablecoin, why it's so important is, look at it, this is money on chain. Token is just a digital representative of ownership. Look at the money have come into 3 stages, if I may say this way. Stage 1, paper-based. Stage 2, today is electronic-based, but with a centralized entity, like with the bank. We give money to the bank. You don't see the money, you just receive an account statement. And you trust the Citibank, JP Morgan, you believe it, central counterparty. Then coming to the stage 3 is represented in a token way. Just an ownership of your money, but it's recorded by blockchain. And the blockchain is not only the accounting system, the blockchain is the settlement system. This settlement system is fundamentally different from today, which means clearing settlement happened simultaneously. Clearing and a settlement are 2 different things. That's the fundamental of a current or the infra, payment infra. But coming to the blockchain is a real time. Either clear, settle, or no clearance, no settlement. So this kind of fundamental things changed, that becomes so important. So that's why the stablecoin plus wallet plus blockchain, these 3 simple things together is dollar infrastructure. No matter US dollar, I mean Hong Kong dollar, Singapore dollar, or whatever dollars, just wallet, stablecoin, chain, 3 things together is a whole dollar infrastructure. For the cross-border is a substitute of SWIFT. For the C2C payment could be a supplement or even substitute of Visa, Master, American Express, this credit card settlement thing. And the money on chain, since it's a wallet to wallet, just like we're sending email versus we're sending letters, physical letters, very warm but slow. Then cross-border is it's a borderless technology. This number 1. Number 2, once the money on chain, how do you use the money? There are only 2 usages of money. One is to buy something. Number 2 is to invest into something. Buy something, you need to spend the money, get your food, get your furniture. So it's a payment, B2B or B2C payment. Then the money in your pocket, if you don't invest, you earn nothing. You earn nothing. Now the stable coin in your wallet is how do you own the money? You have ownership. But since this money in your wallet is no longer with the bank, there is even no current account deposit interest. No. If you don't do anything, you earn nothing. Just like a physical notes in your physical wallet, you earn nothing. So the token be there, you can invest. That will be token assets.
So from a liquidity standpoint, like how does it kind of play out? Mercante, you would like to kind of take a jab at this?
Yeah, I wanted to make a maybe a nuanced point. The idea of payment coins I see as really critical infrastructure, but it's just that, it's infrastructure. There's a high opportunity cost to not be earning yield on that cash, right? So to me, what could make sense in a future state is I manage a client's account, I have a 1% cash position, I keep that in a tokenized money market fund, and you hop that money market fund through a stable coin, through a payment coin, to purchase an asset, or that client, if it had them in their own wallet, they could use that for a purchase. You could do the same thing with tokenized anything. They could have an ETF and they want full exposure to the S&P 500. They can have that full exposure to the S&P 500, use $2 to pay for a coffee by hopping through a payment coin. That idea to me makes a lot of sense, but having people sit on billions of dollars of effectively tokenized treasuries without any yield being passed through, it's a high opportunity cost, and I think we need to do something. No, it's not. No, sorry. Did I say that out loud? So that's my kind of view on payment coins. I think they're really critical infrastructure, but that's what they are. They're infrastructure. There needs to be something on top that we pass more of the benefit of what's actually happening underneath the hood to the end user.
I think you've nailed it. I think yield-bearing cash is a killer use case. It might hurt Ryan's business a little bit. But right now, stablecoins is what? It's a $200 billion market cap, which as an asset manager, they'd be ranked like 400 in the world. So it's not exactly huge. It is a great killer use case. Of the 200 billion, most of that is Tether at like 120, and then I think Circle has like 80 billion. So I think the banking institutions are going to become more open, I think, to banking some of these regulated stablecoin issuers. And that is like the gateway into, I think, this space. And I think the success of the asset side is definitely correlated to the success of the stablecoin side. Because if the regulations say you cannot pass interest to the end user, because it looks like this is the way it's going to end up, you either end up with a really small team that ends up being very rich, that has yachts and things like that, or you just pass on the yield, which disrupts the existing banking model. So I think what's happened is you buy a tokenized money market fund. And that's been like, you move in and out of that to get yield, and then you move back to the stable coin. So this is kind of a non-answer, but maybe I'll let Ryan take it from there.
No, and I think it's interesting, like everyone's like, oh, digital assets are gonna disrupt your business, so it's gonna, and full disclosure, when I entered in 2015, I definitely thought I was gonna put the incumbents out of business, so like, here I am. But if you think about the way that a lot of these payment intermediaries, fintechs emerged in the 2000s, it was kind of gray, they weren't really regulated, then all of a sudden they started getting regulation. It's like, they run on our rails. Like all the infrastructure, they still run on our rails. So I think that, we've been around for 200 years for a reason, right? We continually have to reinvent ourselves, and if this new, payment infrastructure emerges, we will figure out a way to, support our clients if that's what our large enterprises do. So I don't think it's apples and oranges. I think there's actually a potential for like a more homogeneous relationship between them.
Super interesting. So a lot of banks looking to issue stable coins, and that probably will open up a lot of sort of an opportunity or rails to make transactions. As part of a transaction, on one side you have the asset and the other side you have the stable coin.
I think enable them, though. Right, because I think in the US market, if you were a stablecoin issuer 2 years ago and you tried to find a banking partner, that might have been very difficult.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think obviously that's changed recently, just recently.
So how do you see this playing out with other jurisdictions also starting to offer their stable coins? Like currently we're talking, stable coins by design, we think of USD, but there could again be this whole challenge of fragmentation where other countries could also offer. And I just kind of ask from a experimental thought process, like how do you see that then? Will it create more liquidity? Will it create a challenge where, which is the primary stable coin that the end user eventually wants to hold, whether it's an institution or a retail player? So how do you see that probably in 5-10 years down the line?
Well, I think there's been the consortia approach, where a bunch of banks get together and try to issue something that works between them, I don't think that has a high success rate, to be quite honest. So what you end up happening is kind of like city token services, where they maintain kind of the liability of the deposit. They can use that in borrowing and lending just like they do today. And then there's an on-chain representation of what that is as far as like a liability to your balance sheet. So the question is, how does that interact with other banks that are doing a similar thing? How do you take like, it's kind of like, we're almost recreating Venmo all over again in tokens, but how do you pass the liability if the actual liability is still moving through like ACH? And I think that's a legal thing. Can you carry, like, can cities say, here's a user and here's $500 and this is their liability? As soon as it goes to the other bank chain, can the blockchain kind of clear the liability where it ends up in the destination's blockchain, where you don't have to kind of rely on the old rails? Does that make sense?
Interesting. So if I were to kind of ask you, each one of you, one by one, like what are the top 3 ways you believe you can prop up the demand and engagement for liquidity? What would be your quick 3 words or 3 phrases that you believe will actually enable the industry forward? Like takeaways from an audience standpoint.
Let me try. I would say maybe just one word. I would say stablecoin will be the key enabler. A stablecoin is the one to connect the so-called off-chain assets to the on-chain assets in the token way. So stablecoin is a bridge. Once this is developed, leverage on the stablecoin, then no matter one rail is go for the payment, another is go for the investment. So the liquidity can be created.
Okay, thank you, Henry.
I think for me, like success breeds success. So if our clients actually to be able to use this technology in a really easy way, obfuscate all the blockchain from it, but to have that real time 24/7 will hopefully just open the doors for more applicability.
Amazing.
I think just create compelling reasons to the user, like why you would trade this way. I think a lot of like what we've done so far is like very basic things on blockchains. It's like, great, you minted some shares there. You can hold them in your wallet. How's that different from a brokerage account? It's really not that different, and it's way more complicated. So I think liquidity also is driven from utility. What can you do with this thing now that you have it? And I'd like to think everyone's here and excited about this technology because this is composable technology. And when things become composable and you have an ecosystem built around an asset, you can do very, very interesting things with that asset. And I think the liquidity is going to come for what are those compelling things the user can do with that asset outside of just holding it and seeing a balance in a brokerage account.
Okay.
Ryan stole my idea. It was utility. But we could list a bunch of ways that I think utility could happen through tokenization. But what I'll pivot to, distribution is key. You're not going to bring liquidity without bringing assets, asset managers, and market makers on chain. And the only way to do that is by plugging into their existing infrastructure. So our banking clients are going to continue to want to use their front end that they're using that's built off of SEI's wealth platform. So you need to plug into SEI's wealth platform. We need to find the right ways to do that. So that, to me, is the way forward. We have to continue to plug and play into existing infrastructure while all of the back end is abstracted away.
Amazing. I think that's a very well put kind of a note. I mean, it's a cat and mouse game between assets that are available for access. If not available, then how can I actually use my stable coins? I have no reason to have stable coins to be able to access those. So at the end of the day, you need to also have asset issuers come and tokenize to kind of bring the new demand in the market to kind of say where to use some of those stable coins for investments that have traditionally not been possible. So I think I'll quickly open up to some questions as well if in the audience. Okay, time? Okay. One question. Okay, sorry.
She's giving you the no.
One question, so.
Thank you so much. Eduardo Sabatino from CK Digital. A question for Harry. I mean, it's very interesting what you're doing with Invesco. Can you elaborate a bit more on the transaction and the way you're actually distributing the assets?
Very quickly is we create a so-called minimal viable ecosystem. If I say stablecoin plus minimal viable ecosystem is an end-to-end closed loop. So in this case, is an Invesco is the asset provider. Number two, DGFT, we are the tokenization service provider, just bring the assets on chain. And the DGFT also be the distribution platform. Then number four, to create the ecosystem close is the people who wants to get exposure to this asset class. Invesco, of course, is a big name, but I think that some contributions for these assets bring on chain is it is not money market fund. It's a private credit fund. It's a private credit fund, so just add on another different asset classes. So just put these three things together, asset provider, tokenization, distribution. The next step is the application. Why the people use want to invest into private equity, private credit, but in a token way, is to create use cases because of its composability, interoperability, etc.
I think we're done. So we can close off with the note that we started off with 3 Ryans. We still have 3 Ryans. We are stable here. So thank you so much for having us.